If you've ever looked at working with doctors and thought it just wasn't worth the effort, you're not alone. Many financial professionals avoid physicians because the conversations feel intimidating and it's hard to know where to start. But the reality is, doctors are one of the most underserved groups in our industry and often have some of the most dire planning needs. From major business transactions and patented technology to estate planning considerations, there's a lot happening beneath the surface. Today, we're joined by our expert guests, Jason Odell, Managing Partner, and Carole Foos, CFO of OJM Group, which is now part of Earned. They'll break down what financial professionals commonly misunderstand about physicians and how to approach these opportunities with greater confidence and clarity. By the end of this episode, you'll walk away with a completely different perspective.
Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast for financial professionals, bringing you life insurance insights from advanced sales experts and life insurance specialists. Grow a stronger practice today.
Welcome to another episode of Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast. I am your host, Bill Bell, Vice President of Advanced Sales with Penn Mutual, and I am so pleased that you chose to join us here today. I would like to introduce our two esteemed guests. Two people I've known for a long time, two people that I consider very good friends, Jason Odell and Carole Foos of the OJM Group, which has recently become part of Earned. Jason, Carole, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. Well, we're going to dive right into it. We're not going to do a whole lot of fluff up front. First question is for Jason. So your firm has primarily focused on working with medical professionals, specifically doctors. And I'm curious as to how you got into that particular industry as an area of specialization. One of the things that people ask me all the time is, how did you get into the insurance industry? And my answer always is, they were hiring. When you started working with medical professionals, was it something that you wanted to do, or was it just a market that you saw opportunity in and that they were hiring?
Yeah, it's a great question. I get it asked a lot, and I talk a lot about it when I meet new physician prospects. And, really, mine's a kind of a unique way. When I was in college, after my sophomore year of college, I needed an internship because I was paying for college. And an alum of my fraternity was a financial advisor, and he hired me to be a summer intern and make cold calls. And his clients were primarily physicians. And therefore, I learned from him that physicians were a good market to work with. In the next 2 years, I just worked with him and for him full time. And he taught me the way of how do you work with a physician? How do you get licensed properly? How do you get set up? And when I graduated from college, I opened up my own practice with the idea of calling on resident and fellow physicians because they were younger. They needed a lot of help. They didn't have a lot of money. And certainly a 22-year-old, 23-year-old coming out of college, there was no way I could talk to a 50-year-old physician and tell them anything more about finances that they hadn't already lived that I had no idea about. And so it was a good market. There's no great story behind it other than really kind of they were hiring. I needed a job, and I had an incredible mentor that really guided me along the way and really looked out for me. And so those 2 years were the most educational that I had in terms of just learning real world things as opposed to being in class. I took classes in the evening actually so that I could work during the day with Brian.
So we're going to dive into a little bit of what you mentioned in regards to some of the challenges of working with physicians a little bit later on. But Carole, my first question to you is, what are some of the differences between a medical practice and other types of businesses, like say a manufacturing company or just kind of a general operating business?
I would say one of the main differences is often there might be a finance person who is doing the accounting work or the finance work at the medical practice. So perhaps there's somebody there who has a degree in business, but often there's really not. A lot of times it's someone who either has maybe taken a few, has some bookkeeping experience or something like that. So you're dealing with a manufacturing business or any other type of maybe service business, you're generally dealing with people who have been formally educated in business topics. Whereas sometimes at a medical practice, you may be dealing with the decision makers who have never been formally trained in any business classes. So they are really very willing to soak up any knowledge that we can provide to them. I think, a lot of people always say to me, "Oh, aren't doctors difficult to work with?" And I would honestly say, no, I love working with them because they're so anxious to get our advice and to listen to us on things. And certainly you're right, they've got other outside professionals that they're working with that they can bounce our ideas off of, but they're thirsting for that knowledge. So I like that.
Yeah, I love that answer. In fact, one of the reasons why we wanted to have the two of you on is that's the most common thing I hear about working with doctors is that they're difficult, they're challenging. I don't want to work with them, but your practice has been very successful with that, and it makes a lot of sense that they want the knowledge. So if you can give them that knowledge, I think that obviously is a big check mark in your column in regards to being able to work with them. And then a follow up, Carole. There's been a lot of consolidation in the medical industry over the last couple of decades. I think that a lot of practices have been bought up. They're part of these now big, giant medical conglomerations. Has that changed how your firm has to approach these docs? Has it changed the planning for a lot of them? What has that consolidation been like for people that want to work with medical professionals?
I mean, it definitely has, because if you think about it, right, a lot of my planning with our medical practice clients is from the tax end. So for independently owned practices or smaller practices, that might be adding a defined benefit plan. It might be doing a Section 162 plan with life insurance and things like that. When they become part of these bigger practices or maybe owned by private equity, often that means those physicians who were the owners and the sole decision makers in the practice no longer are. So it does become, in some regards, more personal planning aspects for those physicians who maybe have now had a liquidity event and are looking for, what do I do next? How do I reduce my risk? How do I reduce my taxes? But it's not necessarily as easy to do practice planning because often we're not dealing anymore with the sole decision makers for those practices that are being bought up.
In fact, they've kind of already done their practice planning by selling it to somebody else at that point. They've taken that off the table.
Yeah, you're right. They've done sort of their pre-retirement planning.
All right. So, Jason, question for you. We're about 4 minutes into the podcast here, and we've already made a couple of references to this, but there are a lot of FPs out there that say that they don't want to work with doctors because doctors are really challenging. They think they know everything. They're hard to deal with. They have really, really tight schedules. So sometimes FPs will have to meet with a doctor for like 15 minutes and then they got to run to somewhere else. What are some of the unique challenges that you see, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Their schedules are demanding. If they're not seeing patients, they're not making money. If they're not in the operating room, they're not making money. And so their time is very limited. I think that it's finding the right type of client slash physician, right, that you want to work with and that appreciates your advice and your professionalism and what you're bringing to the table. And I think what probably is a little bit different from the way we go about our approach than maybe just in general in the financial services community is not everybody is a good client. Not everybody is a prospect, and not everybody should be someone that you want to work with. And there are those that are do it yourselfers and information seekers and people that think that they know more than you'll ever know about your particular area of expertise. And I think, the way we go about it is we take an educational approach to getting clients where we're providing them educational material for them to review and give them a lot of information. They're learners. Physicians are learners by their very nature, right? They enjoy learning. It's something that's kind of goes to their core of their being. And, if you can provide them information that you're, giving to them to help them make decisions, that's going to attract the right kind of client that you want to work with, someone who respects what you're doing. And by us providing educational material, that then sort of reverses the prospecting. And now we have physicians calling us instead of me calling them and saying, "Hey, I'd like to help you with your insurance." And they're calling us saying, "Hey, I read an article that you provided on insurance and I would like to learn more about it. And can you help me?" So it automatically weeds out that physician that the stereotype is out there about. Doesn't mean that they weed them all out. Some of them do come through, but at the end of the day, you've taken this approach to give them educational material. Now they're reaching to you and saying, "Hey, will you help me?" The whole tables shift, the paradigm shift. Now you're an expert. You're giving them the help that they came to us and said, "Hey, I'm asking you for help." It's not me saying, "Hey, I want to sell you insurance." And over the years, it certainly took a while to do that, but m my whole career and then our career as we built OJM was built on the idea of education and provide information to hopes that then they're gonna review that information and want more information, and they come seek that help from us. So it does demand your time in terms of you have physician hours. So there are certainly, especially early on in my career, there were very what I would call few days off, evenings off. You were doing meetings at 8 o'clock at night in a hospital cafeteria. You were working on a Saturday morning. You were doing a call on a Sunday afternoon. Now more, a lot of the in practice or established physicians usually have a day off through the course of the week or some once every other week where they're able to do their business meetings and schedule at sort of a normal time. But for those that are just starting in the business, and it's different than certainly when I started 30 some years ago, technology can probably be leveraged more now than I had. I didn't have technology back then. I was going down to cafeterias and using a paging system, which most people probably have no idea what that is. But, things are different. But, again, physician, to your point, are difficult to work with if you've got the wrong physician working with you. So are clients, though. Any client, an engineer, an accountant, an attorney, a business owner, they can be difficult too. So I think it's really about finding the right client.
All right, Carole, a question for you, and this dives into the financial aspect here. So many doctors, they graduate from medical school. They've got, it is a very technical term, oodles of student loan debt. How are you able to kind of draw the line in between paying back those student loans and kind of maintaining those while also planning for the future for a lot of these docs? Or does your firm at this point really deal with people that have already paid back the student loans, or is it kind of a mix?
It's a mix. We do talk to young doctors newly in practice. I think, as Jason said, we really focus on education. So we would approach them very similarly to how we would approach a more mature physician. We kind of look at a baseline of here's the pot of money that you have available. We're going to look at things like what's the interest rate on the student loan debt? Does it make sense to pay some of that down or reconfigure it? We show them a lot of information on starting to save early into your 401k and that compounding and the tax savings on that. So we really just try to look at the whole picture of their finances in terms of their budgeting. What do they have in terms of a mortgage? Do they have kids in their, got childcare expenses? Like I said, saving for retirement, student loan debt. We have kind of a pyramid approach that we look at in terms of what we feel are sort of the most important. What's the baseline? And then as you get those raises each year, where do you add in? So, and I think that works well. And I think they appreciate that. Again, I feel like a lot of them, some of them, come from families of physicians too, and maybe haven't had, they don't have a mom who's a CPA who's sitting down telling them how to budget when they get out of school or get their first job. So it's a lot of that, just sort of practical advice. And for some of them, it's very individualized because some of them are just focused on, I got to get rid of some of this debt. Like it's weighing on me. You have to accept that from people too. A little bit of it is you got to be able to sleep at night with what you're doing. We can only sort of tell you the analytical side of it or how we feel like it's going to work. But at the end of the day, it's got to be what they're comfortable with.
So I want to turn now to marketing, and I think that your firm probably does a better job of marketing to medical professionals than most out there. I would say you're probably top of the heap, but I don't know everybody in this space, but I'm going to make that assumption. Jason, how do you market to physicians? How do you get in front of them? How do you make it so that they want to work with your firm?
Yeah, we have an incredible marketing team behind us, and in our one of our partners, David Mandel, leads that charge. And it is kind of to that point I made earlier. It is an educational based marketing approach where we're providing a significant amount of content. So we've written 12, 15 books specifically for physicians, co-authored a few of them with actual physicians. We write in medical periodicals monthly. We produce a podcast as well. David does, where he has, anybody that's in the medical space on as a guest to interview them and talk to them, whether it's about just how they're running their practice, best practice ideas, all the way to, financial people being on it and other people that he can interview and producing that content. We speak at the medical conferences that the physicians put on. So they put these medical conferences on just like we would have an insurance conference in Las Vegas or wherever. There, a lot of them are in Las Vegas and or the big cities. And so we'll go speak in a breakout session or we'll speak on the main platform. And in doing so, again, we're providing an educational component to that. We're giving them information that then allows them to say, oh, wow, that was something that I didn't even think about, but I better call this group and have them help me out. So we're really trying to, we've got a newsletter that's got, 10 or 15,000 physicians that are subscribed to it, that we're pushing content out that way. So what we're really trying to do is provide a lot of content and get it out through a number of different channels. Carole and David have recorded over the years a CME piece that's actually physicians can go either to a warm or cold place and they listen to 4 hours of lectures, CME lectures, continuing medical education, and of which David and or Carole have a portion of that time. They do it for a week. And that's another channel, if you will, of marketing that we've done for years that generate clients and opportunity for us on the marketing front. So again, no one way works. And the other thing I would say on marketing is and that you can't do something once and expect a result. It's got to be a continuation of it. I mean, we've been speaking at some medical conferences for 10, 15 years in a row, and we've spoken at some for 3 and gotten, no real clients out of it. But maybe the fourth year you go, all of a sudden the floodgates open and in comes a lot of opportunity for us at that time. So you can never just rely on a one-hit wonder, if you will. It's a continuous method and never, well, I say all the time, we're not going to stop what we've been doing. We'll continue to do that. Maybe we'll add another feature, something that we're going to try and see if that works out too.
So let me see if I can summarize. There's a lot of different ways that you get in front of these docs, whether it's newsletters, books, speaking. By the way, I'm just imagining a doctor's conference of like 1,000 people in lab coats just walking around. And there's no way that that's as fun as our insurance conferences, which
Definitely not.
but so be diversified in your approach, but also persistent, that you can't do something once and give up. It takes some time, just like any other good marketing, I think. But obviously with doctors, they're very busy. So it might even take a little more persistence beyond traditional clients.
Yeah, perfect. You nailed it.
All right. Carole, one of the things that I've seen with some of the bigger cases that I've worked on with doctors is that they have side businesses. And obviously, these are doctors that have been around now for a while, but they create these side businesses like surgical centers or something along those lines. Does that add to the complexity? Does it make the planning just bigger? How do you deal with those types of doctors that do have those, in some cases, very significant side businesses?
Yeah, I think honestly, it often makes the planning easier because if they've got a side business, a lot of times they have a side business where they're the only owner in that side business. So, and again, it also just creates more disposable income typically. So, you've got money to work with, you've got that client as maybe the sole decision maker. Certainly, it makes it more difficult in terms of you've got to think about things depending on what you're trying to do with them, like controlled group rules or affiliated service group rules, which can limit what they can do for retirement plans and some things. But I definitely think it gives you more tools to choose from when they've got kind of that second stream of income. So we like to see that because we feel like it gives us more opportunities to do some financial planning with them and we can get more creative.
We haven't talked at all about life insurance yet, so this is the part of the podcast where we do so. How do you wrap life insurance into the conversation? Is it really just kind of about the death benefit protection for kind of younger docs? Is it about the cash accumulation for retirement income? Is it for buy-sell planning in regards to these kind of outside businesses? Is there estate planning? How does life insurance come up, and is it just different for everybody?
I would say all of the above. I mean, we really do talk to them about it in all of those aspects. I think for a lot of our clients, given their age, we are looking at life insurance as a tool for a way for them to pull out tax-free income in their retirement years. And that's of interest to them, a little bit like a supercharged Roth account, right? That they can put more money into and then have the ability for it to grow tax-free and come out tax-free. So that's certainly big. But again, for the younger clients, it could be death benefit. For owners, it's certainly funding a buy sell, estate planning, really any and all of the above. But probably for the majority of our clients, it's more likely to be they're looking for a source of tax-free income in retirement.
And then, Jason, creditor protection is always an issue with doctors. Is that part of the conversation when you're talking about life insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Carol hit it perfectly. E is the right answer, all of the above. When you start at a younger, you're looking at death benefit only type of insurance coverages. The great thing I think about the life insurance vehicle is that it has so many applications through the course of anybody's financial lifespan, right? And one of the cool things about that product is that there's a utilization for it on all kinds of different situations, right? And so as Carol mentioned, the death benefit protection early on, the accumulation component of it, life insurance. When we start talking about accumulation, we really wrap it around three big themed areas, right? First is the death benefit protection. Second is going to be the tax benefits, the utilization of tax free buildup and distributions via withdrawals and loans, if properly structured and if the policy is built properly and structured properly, work incredibly well. And so you've got Carol as a CPA talking about that component and bringing that home. And then you've got the asset protection feature, which is our partner David Mandel's background as an attorney is asset protection. And in about 21 states, cash value life insurance is exempt from creditors by state statutes. So you have your creditor protection breaks down in a number of different ways, whether it's a federal statute or a state statute. But in this case, you get the 21 states that have creditor protection for cash value life insurance. And so you've got three awesome uses and things that really sync together, whether, with the death benefit, the tax component that we just talked about, and the asset protection makes it a great vehicle for someone who it makes sense for them to have. And what I mean by makes sense is you've got to find the right particular client for that utilization. What I mean is it's not just for everybody. You've got to have someone that has disposable income, has funded all of their other vehicles first, and then they still have excess cash flow, and now they're looking for another place to put money and do it in an efficient manner. And it should make up a small percentage of their overall portfolio. And then as you move into the next phase, right, you get into the whole, estate tax, ability to utilize that for those that have a net worth that it makes sense for. So you've got that. Plus, then you have all these physicians, as you mentioned, Bill, earlier, that are business owners, and now you can utilize it for you've got it now for the business owner to do buy sell agreements and fund executive benefit programs. And so life insurance really becomes a tool in all kinds of different phases. And so it's really cool. You get to talk about a lot of different applications for that particular vehicle.
I want to dive into one additional application here. And Jason, I'll direct this to you. I think that people traditionally have kind of seen the pension plan and cash balance plan market, kind of the traditional market being the individual physician with maybe 3 or 4 staff members that are younger and maybe don't make as much money. Is that still the case in regards to the doctor market when you're talking about cash balance plans to doctors? Who is it that you look for when you're talking about these kind of pension plans for retirement income for docs?
I'll tell you what, certainly if you're looking for the sort of the simplest vertical for that, yes, you'd say, hey, slightly older physician, younger staff, relatively small amount of staff. Normally, those economics look really, really good. However, what I will tell you is with some of the designs that are out there now that we're seeing from some of the TPAs out there, you can take really even a large group of physicians and they can build out a cash balance plan and include a small group of, even if there's 200 employees, and carve out a small group of those employees to really make a cash balance plan work well. And utilization of life insurance can be a vehicle inside of that as well. So yes, if you'd say, hey, what's the simplest, it'd be that, older physician. By older, I don't mean that old, but with a younger makeup of staff, even a turnover of staff, get turning over of staff, that sort of helps. You don't want that to be a criteria. That does mean there's probably something wrong in your office, but you end up with, a good, good economics in that. But we've seen designs from TPAs, Bill, honestly, with groups. Carol and I worked on a group of orthopedic surgeons out west, and there were probably 30 or 40 orthopedic surgeons and maybe 250 employees, and they were carving out, and the economics look spectacular on that group.
Terrific. So I think that the takeaway there would be is that even if you don't have a client that's kind of that traditional market for a pension plan, don't necessarily move away from that. There might be things that can be done in regards to planning for them.
Absolutely.
Carole, we've focused on doctors because that's what your firm focuses on, but do the same things that we're talking about here today apply to a lot of other professionals that aren't necessarily medical professionals? So like attorneys or CPAs, architects, whatever it might be, that are kind of your working professionals that need financial planning.
Absolutely. We have certainly a decent number of our clients who are non-physician, business owners, high net worth individuals. And sometimes I get asked that question, wasn't your firm, don't you specialize in physicians? And what I say is we market to physicians because that's where we have sort of grown up and how we built our firm. However, the planning doesn't really change, right? If you're a business owner and you're looking for additional ways to save for retirement, to have, tax efficient investing, all those types of things, asset protection, important for everyone. So that can apply to people in all kinds of fields. Certainly attorneys, accountants, architects, owners of a small service business or a manufacturing business, really across the board. It's just taking those planning tools and using them in similar businesses.
Last question, and I'll throw it out to both of you. If a financial professional was looking to get into the doctor market, what advice would you have for them? Is there anything specific that, Jason, for example, you just go back in time 30 years. Is there something that you wish that somebody had told you that could have been really helpful when you were first starting out your practice?
Wow. I guess I was pretty fortunate to have a great mentors, as I mentioned. But yeah, I would tell if someone's thinking about considering it's an extraordinarily rewarding profession. It's very few, as we all know, succeed in this business just because the weed out is so high. But what I would tell them is don't give up on trying something and trying to narrow your focus down to a specific target market and focus in on that, become a expert in that particular market. And once you become an expert, you then become the person that everybody wants to go to, whether it's working with engineers or architects or whomever. You become that expert and then you promote yourself as that expert. You'll succeed in our business. And if you're considering coming into the financial planning area and want to work with physicians, call me. I'll help you out.
That's very generous of you. Carole, anything to add?
I would totally agree with what Jason said. I think it's, do your homework. If you're trying to enter the field of working with physicians, they're obviously highly intelligent. They're going to do their homework and read a lot and ask a lot of questions. So you very much want to be prepared with your answers and really know what you're talking about. And you become an expert in your field so that you can kind of teach them about the planning items you're trying to present to them. I think that's one of the most important aspects for sure. And be willing to some extent to work around their schedule. You are going to have to do some 7 p.m. calls with them or, 7 a.m. calls or whatever it might be. And certainly starting out, you do have to be willing to sort of work around that.
That's great advice. So we like to end these podcasts with some fun questions to give a little flavor in regards to who our guests are. And Jason, I'm going to start with you. So first of all, last year we had you on our YouTube video series, Bite Sites and Life Insurance Insights, available on the Penn Mutual YouTube channel. For those of you that haven't watched, I would encourage you to do so because not only is it a fun conversation, but you get to see Jason and I both wear a bib, which is just worth the visual right there. But I asked you this question there, but we have a very different, much larger audience for this show. So I'm going to ask it again. You've been known to golf from time to time. Favorite course to play, and what's one course, if you had your druthers, that you would play on here in the near future?
Favorite golf courses, favorite golf course to play. Golf's like wine, I like to say. Everybody sort of has their own type and flavor that they like, and there's no really right answer. My favorite golf course to play is in Columbus, Ohio, called the Golf Club. It's a magnificent golf course, Pete Dye golf course, and I thoroughly enjoy playing that. I would also say that I think if you haven't been able to play it, one of the greatest places to play golf is Pebble Beach, and playing Pebble Beach golf course is an amazing experience if you get an early tee time. The later tee times, not so much because the rounds are very long. But if you can get one of those earlier tee times, you can go play Pebble Beach. It's something truly special.
And where would you like to play?
I'd like to play Augusta National Golf Club. So if anybody's out there and would like to take me, I'd be happy to. I had a daughter that went to the University of Georgia, and I asked her over and over again to find somebody down there that's father was a member and get me invited somehow. Well, 4 years went by and I didn't get that invite, but I'm still holding out hope.
There's still time.
Still time.
I'm sure that one of our listeners has an in. So if you do have an in, give Jason Odell a call. Now, Carole, question for you. I've known you for a long time. We're good friends. And I would say that you really have three big loves in your life: your family, obviously, first and foremost, your business, and then Xavier basketball. And for our listeners, don't ever call it Xavier. It's Xavier.
That's correct.
One of the things that I think fascinates me whenever I go to Cincinnati is the level of hatred between Xavier and the University of Cincinnati and their basketball programs. Can you explain how fierce that rivalry is and what it means to the city?
It is very fierce. I mean, Bill, it's not that much of a rivalry anymore because Xavier pretty consistently wins these days, as we did a couple of weeks ago. I think it stems from Xavier's a small Jesuit university. We have had a great basketball program, and I truly hope we're going to get back to that point of having a great basketball program. But we were sort of the little brother for a long time. And so anytime we beat them, this was many years ago, it was such a big deal to Xavier. And then the tide sort of turned. We've been certainly, I would say, more successful than they have in the NCAA tournament the last several years. I'm not trying to make any UC listeners angry, but again, the schools are only a couple miles apart. Students see each other, go to each other's bars, see each other at bars and things like that. So it is just a very, very intense rivalry that we're sort of dominating lately. But, family first for sure. Xavier basketball and my business. I don't know which I'd put two and three. It's hard.
I didn't necessarily rank the last two.
Okay.
Family
Okay.
first, for sure.
Family first, for sure.
Family first. All right. And then last question. I'm going to throw it out to both of you. Jason, we'll start with you. So I give my occasional co-host, Jenna Washaka, a lot of grief about Cincinnati and it being a medium place, because that's what it was called in the show The Good Place, that Cincinnati was a medium place. But it's actually one of my favorite cities to go to. I love going there. I go there at least once a year. It's a great city. There's some great food there, great sights. The Reds are a lot of fun, even though they're not really good, to go to a game there. The Bengals, well, we won't talk about that. But what is one thing that you would say to somebody that hasn't been to Cincinnati, or maybe has only been once or twice, that they should do in Cincinnati, either as hidden gem or something that you would just say, you got to do this if you go into the city?
Well, I would say, the easy answer to that is you got to try Skyline chili at least once to say that you've done that. It's a unique kind of chili. It's not for everybody. But if you are born and raised in Cincinnati, you will love it for certain. I am not born and raised in Cincinnati. I don't love it. My children, my wife love it, but I would tell you, you got to try Skyline chili just once if you come to Cincinnati. But I would also say Cincinnati is an incredible place to raise a family. It's a big city that's small in the sense that we do, as you mentioned, we have professional sports. We've got college sports, two great universities in the area. And so it's just a great Midwestern town. It's hilly, it's green, it's awesome fall time. The weather isn't the best a lot of other times, but it's just a great place to come and to visit.
I would agree with all of those things. I do think we have in the past, 10 to 15 years, I think we've gotten to be kind of a great food scene. Really good restaurants, both in Cincinnati and across the river in Covington. I think there are just a lot of cool little places to explore from that standpoint that I think a city our size doesn't always have.
Yeah, it's an amazing food scene. In fact, when I was there a couple of weeks ago, because that was my trip to Cincinnati, I knew going in that I was probably going to gain about 4 or 5 pounds. And I came back and stepped on the scale, and that's exactly what happened. So I've dropped them since then, but it took a little bit of work to do so. But yeah, it's a great food town. It's a great city. It really is. And the people there are just so nice and genuine. I love going. All right. Well, with that, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Life Matters, a Penn Mutual podcast. I think that people that are interested in working with docs, or they worked with docs in the past and maybe re-exploring that, would get a lot out of this. And then obviously any kind of business owner, a lot of the same methodology and practices are going to work with those business owners as well. So I really appreciate both of you being on. I appreciate your friendship. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Always happy to talk to you.
Well, thank you again to Jason and Carole. Two great people, two of my favorites. I really got a lot out of the conversation. I hope you did as well. If you have a question for me or for Jason or for Carole or for anybody else associated with the show, you could drop us an email at lifematters@pennmutual.com. Again, that's lifematters@pennmutual.com. That's a special mailbox that only I have access to, and I do respond to every email that is sent there. So again, one last time, that's lifematters@pennmutual.com. We made reference during the show to Bite Sites and Life Insurance Insights, which is just one of the fabulous shows that we have on the Penn Mutual YouTube channel. If you have not visited the Penn Mutual YouTube channel, you have run out of excuses. Please do so today. You are missing lots of great content there, including the opportunity to see Jason, Odell, and I wearing bibs. You just go to YouTube, you type in Penn Mutual in the search bar, it will bring up the channel. While you are there, smash that subscribe button. Start to like some of the videos. Lots of great content there. I promise you will not be disappointed. Speaking of subscribing, if you haven't subscribed to this show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, please do so today so you don't miss any future episodes of the show. And speaking of Apple Podcasts, if you do use Apple Podcasts, which is still our biggest distribution system for this show, stop by, leave us a 5-star review. It helps to boost visibility of the show. And if you leave a actual written review, I will be your best friend. So please do that today. So for Jason Odell, for Carole Foos, I'm Bill Bell. Thanks so much for joining us, and I look forward to talking to you again on the next episode.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.